Hello, everybody. Welcome to Two Rivers Tuesday. I'm Maggie Kalala here with John Teague. How are you, John Teague?
I've got a real congested voice this morning. It's really great. It's the deep voice that I wish I had all the time.
Give us a spin of a country music song.
That would be like, baby, turn them lights down. How's it go? Baby, lock them doors and turn them lights down low.
You used to lead worship. Does everybody know this fun fact about you?
I don't know that everyone knows that fun fact. They do now, apparently.
Yes.
But yes, I did lead worship for a time. Not at Two Rivers Church,
Yes.
Chattanooga.
Yeah.
No.
As when someone is doing that, does it help to be congested?
No.
Or would it make it more difficult?
It makes it far more difficult.
Okay, good
Yes.
to know.
Yeah.
Unless you're doing a deep
Unless
country
you're singing
special.
bass or something. Yeah, a country special.
Yeah.
Is that should we bring that back in
I
worship
think we should.
services at Two Rivers Church? A
Yeah.
special?
And John Veal would be the one to do it because he has that deep country
he does.
voice.
He has that voice. So, yeah, there are a few people that I would think okay, yeah, let's do a special.
Yeah. So John Veal, if you're listening, we want you to think of a country special to do on a Sunday morning, please.
But gospel,
Yes,
country
yeah.
gospel.
A little Jesus weaved in, please.
Yeah, I feel like Brian House would jump up there with him and do
He
a
would
little
like
Southern
that,
gospel.
Yes, Southern gospel is right up his alley.
Yeah, yeah.
We should have a throwback Sunday. All right. I don't know why I was talking about that. Because of your voice.
Because of my voice, yes.
Hey, on Sunday you talked about being hungry. What is your favorite candy bar?
My favorite candy bar?
Yes, you talked about Snickers.
Yeah, and Snickers is not even close to my favorite candy bar.
Yeah.
I think Twix.
Twix are good. Have you ever had a Zero bar?
A Zero bar. Is that covered in white chocolate?
Yes.
Yeah?
It's very good.
I think I probably had one. Yeah.
It's good. But Twix, that is a classic. All right. Why were you talking about being hungry on Sunday?
Because we were talking about fasting. Jesus said, when you fast. He was talking about fasting in the Sermon on the Mount. So we're talking about how you get hungry when you're fasting.
Yes, yeah. And so I think it's neat that this sermon landed in Lent, and also we're going through the Sermon on the Mount, so it worked out quite nicely. So if you don't know, we invited our church family to join us in a fast through Lent where we're fasting from food on Wednesdays, and just inviting everybody to join us in that. So whether you missed the first week or you haven't jumped in on it yet, you still have an opportunity to get in on it. We have 3 more Wednesdays? 4 more Wednesdays, something like that.
Yes.
We don't know. But would love for you to consider jumping into that with us. All right, so let's talk about the sermon. So in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, when you fast. And I feel like that word can easily just slip by us, but Jesus is assuming that we will do this. And we have kind of lost this practice. It's neglected. You said on Sunday if it was getting picked on the playground, it would get picked last. What do you think are some of the reasons that this does get neglected?
Because we love food. I think that's one of the reasons. It's why I don't fast.
Yes.
I love food. I love to eat. And we're so accustomed to it. We're so out of practice from fasting that fasting is really hard. And so then we do it and we're like, oh, that was terrible.
Yes.
I remember one time, Katie and I were doing a restricted diet, which I sort of distinguished. It wasn't really a fast, even though people call it the Daniel fast.
Yeah.
That's what it was. We were trying to make a big decision in our lives. And so we just out of nowhere just started this Daniel fast. And we were about 5 days in, and you were supposed to be praying through this and seeking the Lord's guidance, and I was just angry. I was so not pleasant to be around. I was hangry. I was not enjoying my days. I felt like there was nothing to look forward to. And all of this is probably not the Daniel plan's fault. This is my own issues. But I remember at one point telling Katie, and with all sincerity, I was like, I felt closer to God when I was eating whatever I wanted, And so whether that's true or not, I don't know, but it was because we're just not good at this,
Yeah.
And so, I'm answering your question by just saying, well, we're not good at it, and that's why we don't do it.
Yes. Yeah. No, people don't like doing things that they're not good at.
That's right.
And if you've like done it poorly in the past where you just restricted food but didn't like add anything in, then your like experience of that time was probably negative, and so you're not excited to do that again.
Yeah, it's like all I did was not eat.
Yes.
And that was hard.
Yes.
You know? Yeah, I think you're right. And I have definitely fallen into that ditch. I think another thing is just that fasting is hard, and because of how it makes us feel, especially when we're not very practiced at it, we almost feel like we're less available, we're less productive, we are less present for the people in our lives and the things that we need to do.
Yes, yeah, I think that's probably the biggest barrier for me, or why I shy away from it, don't want to do it, is because I feel like, well, I have really important things to do, and so I need to feel my best, and if I'm not feeling my best, I won't be able to be as productive and efficient and take as good care of my children, or like whatever. And I think everyone probably has some of those reasons that they can give of like, well, I have important things to do, or like, but I have this thing on that day, or but what if this happens, or I just this idea that like I'm too important to do this, or like what I have is going on is the exception, so I'm exempt from this thing that Jesus invites me into.
Yes. And I think that what we're kind of talking about here is kind of the other half. So if there's two, and I said this on Sunday, if there's two ways to practice, as a rhythm and as a response, I think we get the response piece. When our backs are against the wall, you know, or there's something really big coming up, and it's like, we got to pull out all the stops here.
Yeah.
So like, what all can we reach for? Fasting. We should do that because we want to, you know, eliminate any, we want to just exhaust all possibilities, right? But fasting as a rhythm is totally different. You don't feel that necessarily. You don't feel that, that sense of urgency and desperation. Yeah.
But I think, so if fasting as a response is when we are so desperate, we have to fast because we need God to come through. And then fasting as a rhythm is when we know we want to have that same desperation for God himself.
Yes.
And we want to strengthen our kind of self-denial muscle. Then we plan to fast as a rhythm because we want to have a rhythm of kind of renewing our desperation and hunger for God.
Yeah.
Is that how that works?
I think so. Yeah. And speaking of those self-denial muscles, in our devotion this morning with my two youngest, freshman and sophomore in high school, we were talking about, I think it's Luke 9, where Jesus says, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily and follow me.
Yes.
And we've just been walking through those verses this week. And today we were talking about, like, what does it mean to deny ourselves? And, you know, that was kind of hard for them to think about. I don't know that we're really used to it, and maybe we're not used to it in those words.
Yeah.
And so this is where this practice helps us strengthen those self-denial muscles.
Yes, yeah. And the reason it's common to participate in this practice around Lent is because when you purposefully practice self-denial, you're getting like a very small taste of what Jesus' whole life was, and especially his time on the cross.
Yeah.
And so I think when you experience that, it just kind of gives you a deeper glimpse into the weight of his sacrifice and the weight of like that level of self-denial to the point of death, and the point of death on a cross. And I just think, oh man, like when I feel like I didn't eat lunch, and so I feel this just like, oh, like that was really hard.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that is like nothing compared to what Jesus endured for us. And so I just think it's meant to, another kind of aspect of it is it's meant to give us a glimpse into the heart of Christ and like the lengths he went to for us.
Yeah.
But just on another practical note, I just wanted to say, like, it's okay to be bad at this at first.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I think the kind of, as you were diving into this sermon and as we've been talking about it around the office, it's like, yeah, we haven't flexed this muscle. We're going to be bad at it at first, but we want to get stronger. And this is how we get stronger, is by lifting heavy things and by practicing and by figuring it out. So I just want to give everybody permission, like, you probably will be bad at it at first.
Yeah.
I'm bad at it. Like, it's normal and it's okay. And the purpose is not to do this perfectly or to perform at some high level with this. The purpose of this is Jesus, to grow in our hunger for him and to be strengthened by him, and hopefully to feel the like power of his spirit through us as we're emptying ourselves. So yeah, just remember, it's okay to be bad at it. Let's talk about maybe some practical tips that can help people not be so bad at it.
Yeah.
What did you learn? What are you going to do differently this Wednesday? What are some practical things people can keep in mind?
Yeah. Well, I talked about it on Sunday, just being that a 24-hour fast might be kind of like sundown to nightfall the next day, so like basically eat dinner and then on the next day eat dinner again.
Yes.
I think that's a real practical tip. I made a rookie mistake last Wednesday, the start of the fast. I was like, oh, I'll have a chicken biscuit at the Sixer with the men on Wednesday morning. That's fine. I'll just fast through lunch and dinner. But I got my metabolism revved up because I've been eating breakfast. I mean, I know some people practice different things like intermittent fasting, and I've done that before. You really save money and time on not eating breakfast. But I've started eating breakfast and that was not a good idea for me because my body was like, hey, you fed me once today. Like,
keep it coming.
Keep it coming. Yeah, exactly. And so by the end of the day, I was pretty wiped.
Yeah. I loved how they talked about that's what they do. And I thought that was helpful to just imagine like, okay, maybe eat a little bit of an earlier dinner. And then like the hack is like you're asleep for a lot of it.
Yeah, there you go.
Then you wake up. And I feel like I can see how it would be beneficial to just like start your day already in that mode. So like maybe a lot of us already have a rhythm of time with Jesus in the mornings. And so like you're already kind of like more sensitive and more aware. And she talked about simplifying her day.
Yes,
I thought
so
that
good.
was really helpful because this past Wednesday when I did it, I was like, okay, trying to kind of be mindful of that too, of like, okay, well, I don't want to just like fill this time I have with like cleaning more or like just being productive or getting on my phone or whatever. And so just thinking through like even small ways and little moments that you can steal away. And I think the like beauty of fasting, what I experienced was like in that kind of emptied mindset and like the intentionality of like, okay, I've set this day aside to fast. I feel like God was just really gracious to like remind me of when I was about to have one of those moments that I could steal away. It was just like he was more present. I was more sensitive to where he was leading. I was more eager to pray. And I remember telling you the next day, like, oh, it kind of works. Like it was just a good experience to be like, oh, like there is something, I don't know how it works. I can't even explain it, but there is something different and something special that the Lord does when we're dedicating that time to him. So yeah, I loved her idea to simplify the day, to do the kind of like early dinner and then break it with dinner again. And then I think another big thing is just like stay hydrated.
Yeah. Yes.
Just like drink a ton of water.
Yeah.
And that really like offsets how bad you're going to feel.
Yes. Yeah. And my girls were asking like, okay, so what can you and can't you consume? Like they were asking, can you eat candy? I was like, I guess like how are you going to define candy as like a king size Twix? Like does that define candy? Yeah. That's food, But I've fasted before at some like kind of like set aside retreats, for worship and prayer, and we've had Jolly Ranchers and the mints like we have at church, and those kinds of things. There's not so much caloric intake there that it's going to be an issue, but it may just be that it helps you with something to suck on, you know? Like, because again, the point isn't just like no things come in your body. Yes. The point is longing for more of him, right? And so, let's not get too religious and legalistic about this, like oh, it doesn't work if you have a Jolly Rancher, right? So that was something that I was just gonna throw in there. And then just having a plan. Like for me, I need a plan. So last Wednesday before I failed at dinner, I had set aside time during lunch. I was like, okay, I didn't schedule a lunch appointment. I'm fasting, and so I'm going to stop at this time and I'm going to just take a deep breath. I'm going to move. I'm going to sit in another spot in my office. I'm going to read my Bible, and I'm going to pray for that time, because I've done plenty of days where I've just worked through lunch, you know, because I was busy,
Yeah.
you know, and I didn't want that.
Yes.
Because then I'm just not eating. This time is set aside. And so I needed a plan, or I probably just would have plowed through and been like, sweet, now I've got an extra hour to get stuff done.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's key. I think make a plan, make a clear plan. When is it going to start? What are you going to have? What are you not going to have? And then communicate that plan to the people around you. I mean, not in like a, hey, everybody, I'm fasting way, but like let your family know, like, this is what I'm doing. Because I think or let your life group know, or something like that, to where it's just like somebody else, a little bit of accountability of like I've told somebody I'm doing this, and I want to hold myself to it. Because I think if you just keep your plan internal, then it's really easy to negotiate with yourself. Like, well, we don't really need to also skip lunch, right? You know, but if you have communicated your plan, I think that's just an added layer of like, all right, I'm going to stick to it.
Yeah, I think that's great. I was just thinking that's an okay kind of accountability and notice, you know? I think the notice Jesus is probably talking about is like, you know, posting a picture from like the chair you're sitting in, and you know, it's like POV, you know, fasting for Jesus today, hashtag holy, blessed. Hashtag blessed, you know, all those kinds of things.
Yes, that was very funny. So communicate to your life group. And then this is something, because we're doing this as a church family, let your life group know what is the thing you're longing for, like, and let them pray into that with you. Because part of this, and what you talked about on Sunday, was like, identify what is that thing you're wanting to see Jesus do? What are you longing for? What are you hungering for? And letting other people in on that can be really beneficial too.
You know, the early church, and I mentioned this, but we saw Christians fasting. I mean, Jews, it was a pretty common practice for them to fast. In fact, the Jews were fasting on, I think it was Mondays and Thursdays. And that's probably what the disciples of John were referring to when they came and they're like, hey, we fast. The Pharisees fast. You know, like, why don't your disciples fast? So there was definitely fasting going on. The early Christians, they changed that, I think, somewhat to distinguish themselves from the Jewish practice. But they started fasting on Wednesdays and Fridays. And the thought there, and I think we get this from historical documents in the early kind of 1st and 2nd centuries especially, that they were fasting on Wednesdays because that was the day that Jesus was betrayed. Judas sold him out. Like, that's the day that, not the night that, like, you know, he betrayed him with a kiss, but like when he sold him out to the religious leaders. It was on Wednesday. And then on Friday is when he was crucified. And so Wednesdays and Fridays, Christians would fast, but they were also feasting, you know? I mean, like we see in the early church, like they would gather together and they were devoted to being around the table with one another. And that was just a big part of their lives. So it was feasting and fasting. Yeah. And when they needed to set apart someone to go, like, the world was changed by some time of prayer and fasting. When they prayed and fasted and then set apart, was it Paul and Barnabas, I think? Or was it Paul and Silas? I'm getting them mixed up right now. But it was to set them apart for the work of the ministry and to send them out. And then the gospel began to spread, you know, outside of Jerusalem. And so the world was changed by prayer and by some Christians fasting and praying.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's beautiful to just imagine what the Lord would want to do in our day, what the Lord would want to do in your family, in your heart, in your neighborhood, in your school, like all the places we are. Like, what if we're missing out on some really beautiful, powerful, incredible things that he wants to do because we're neglecting to practice this. So I loved how you kept weaving that in on Sunday. It was just like, what if we're missing out on something really important because we neglect this? And I just think I sensed in that question Jesus inviting me into more through this practice. And so hopefully our whole church family feels that invitation from Jesus into more through this practice. You talked on Sunday about functional saviors and how fasting reveals our functional saviors, like food, like our phones, like noise, like all those things that we turn to kind of fix that moment. And I think as we fast, we kind of need to have eyes to see and be looking for, like, what are some of those things I'm going to be tempted to turn toward.
Yes.
And let that be an opportunity. Like, I think it was Jenny who said, or maybe it was Paul who said, fasting is kind of a tangible answer to that prayer, search me and know me.
Yeah, Paul's talking about that.
I thought that was so good, of like, that's something that's near and dear to the heart of our church family, that we would be a people who are like aware of our sin and like willing to let the Lord show us where we're weak and where we need more of him. And fasting is a way we can like even step into that prayer even more.
Yes.
So I just encourage everybody, and that was so helpful for me, like this Wednesday when you fast, to kind of be on the lookout for like, what are some of those functional saviors you'll feel yourself being pulled toward, and how can you use that as an opportunity to remind yourself like, oh, Jesus is better, and how is he better, and why is he better, and how will he satisfy, and how will this thing not satisfy, and just letting that kind of sanctify us and cleanse us and heal us. Another thing I wanted to talk about was Jesus says, don't be like the hypocrites, kind of like what you're talking about with your social media posts. Like this, I think another thing that fasting reveals is how we long to be recognized. It's like he knows we're going to want people to know that we're doing this. And I think in all of us, there is this just like fleshly tendency to want people to know and to want recognition and to want to be thought highly of. And fasting, I think, even reveals that in us. And so letting your time of fasting be a time to kind of cleanse and heal even that just strong need we all have for recognition.
Yes. And I feel that whenever I come across Jesus or Paul or just the many scriptures that sort of call us to not need the approval of others, not need the recognition of others. But another thing for me that I think this does is it reveals how I want to use something to explain or excuse myself, like, oh, well, I just behave this way because I'm fasting, not necessarily like, so you'll clap me, you'll pat me on the back and say, wow, what a good Christian you are. It's more like, oh, well, that's why he was a jerk. He's fasting.
Yes.
Like that's why he didn't get as much done, he's tired.
Yeah.
And so like whatever it may be, I tend to do that, and like even just saying it out loud, I'm like, oh, that's gross.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like that retention pond. Like you talked about how when all the water was out of it, we see all the gunk.
Yes.
And like the gunk was there either way.
Yes.
And so I just think like fasting just takes that water off the top and we see all the gunk that's in there. And fasting, what you're saying, it doesn't excuse that gunk is there. It's like, oh, like, thank you, God, for like letting me see this. Now let's go to work.
Yes, Jesus wants to heal that.
Exactly. Yeah. And otherwise, if we just keep running to our functional saviors, the functional saviors are almost that water on top that cover all that and keep us from seeing it and numb us from being aware of it. But when we don't run to those functional saviors, when we empty ourselves, we get a glimpse into what's really there, and that's a good thing, even though it's like, ugh, because it's I'm being a jerk, I'm angry, I'm snapping at everyone, I'm just like worthless.
No. Here's what we need to do. We need to fill this thing up, and then we need to put a fountain in it.
Yes.
Right? Like, I love that. It's like, oh, look at that pretty pond.
Keep the water moving.
Look at that pond with that fountain in it. No. That's a retention pond. That's all the water that's drained off the streets, and everything that's like been filtered into there.
Yeah, it's disgusting. But we do try to cover it up and make it look nice. Yeah. I just encourage everybody, as you're fasting, as this stuff is being revealed, don't be discouraged by that. Don't take that as like, well, I'm a failure, I'm not good at doing this. Take all that stuff that rises to the surface, all of that gunk, and give it to Jesus and invite him into cleansing that more fully, because that's what we're after, is like an emptying and a cleansing, and that all of that would result in more hunger for God, and a longing to see what only he can do.
Yeah.
All right, that's it. We'll be back next week. Thanks for listening.
See ya.